First meal, burnt
It
popcorn.
is, it is.
Hey, Joe. Hey. You've been living here.
Everybody ready? Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and we're going to call this meeting to order. It's a called meeting, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. It's time for citizens to speak in accordance with Board Policy 1.404, and Robin Modern asked if she could speak, so I'm going to let her do that.
My name is Robin Modern. I live at 760 Ridgefield Road, Elizabethton, Tennessee. I'd like to thank you for your time tonight and also speak to the fact that this board is very lucky to have a healthcare professional on the board at this point, and I'm sure he's had invaluable input in the policies that you've been able to develop over the recent past. I'm here tonight to speak as a pediatric healthcare professional, as well as the proud parent of 2 graduates of Elizabethton High School and a current rising junior at Elizabethton High School. While no plan is perfect, as parents, it is important that we feel that we are mitigating risk as well as advocating for healthy children. The concern for my rising junior is very different than the concerns of those of elementary school children and junior high children. However, I'd like to try to speak tonight to the concerns that would apply to all children and staff. I will be referencing the American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, as well as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. First of all, a statement from the AAP: schools are fundamental to adolescent and child well-being. The AAP goes on to state that schools provide not only educational instruction, but also social and growth and emotional well-being, as well as nutrition and all the things we're aware that our schools can only give our children in person. The AAP goes on to say that they strongly advocate that all policy considerations for the coming school year should start with the goal of having students physically present in school, and they speak to the importance of in-person learning, as well as the knowledge that it's already evident that there were losses at the end of last school year. We know that distance learning is a last resort, but as a parent, I think that it's important that we have very clear and transparent thresholds for when we will be moving to distance learning, and conversely, when we would reverse that move. Specifically, something that's easy for parents and community members to see, such as the Tennessee Department of Health thresholds of 10 per 100,000 residents. Again, those are easily recognizable and easy found. The threshold for returning, on the other hand, may be a little more complicated and has not been defined by anyone as far as I know. I've looked at multiple school districts' plans, and I found none of them that had a distinct recommendation for when to return to the classroom if in fact distance learning had to be implemented. So I think that's important to define on the front end and to be able to communicate to the community. While the knowledge of children as vectors for SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, is emerging, what we know is that transmission is primarily respiratory droplet, which means that we need a social distance of 6 feet to decrease that transmission. There is some evidence that 3 feet may also offer some benefit, but I don't know of any of our classrooms at current capacity that can accommodate a 6 feet diameter, a 6 feet radius. That being said, I think that it's important to advocate for universal masking of all adults and all middle school and high school children in our system as developmentally appropriate. Recognizing that some educational interactions are not amenable to full face masks, have we considered, do we have the appropriate equipment to allow for masks with a clear panel for patients, for students who require lip reading or who are hard of hearing? Have we considered what happens to our developmentally delayed and special ed children who can't tolerate a face mask? CDC has made no specific recommendations for face shields in absence of face masks. However, it is likely that those shields that fit more like a hat and have a band, I'm sure some of you have seen those shielding, that probably does offer some benefit over nothing at all. Have we garnered those supplies? Are we prepared for those instances where we cannot mask? And we need to remember that we're keeping each other safe. So, it would be important to cohort students and move adults rather than hordes of students, and I'm sure that you all have looked at all those opportunities, and we'll continue to do that going forward. I think that as parents, it would be important for us to know what disinfectant as a system we have chosen. Is it on the EPA list N? That means it's effective for SARS-CoV-2 and safe for humans in the environment. The AAP specifically recommends hydrogen peroxide, citric acid, or ethanol products. If in fact one of those has been chosen, what training have we had in place or do we plan to have for custodial staff, specifically addressing the differences between cleaning and disinfecting as a two-step process? What training do we have for classroom staff if they are being expected to do disinfecting or at least basic cleaning? What routine do we have for that classroom staff to ensure that students are doing basic hand hygiene throughout the day at specified times? Again, a 7-year-old is not going to consider, oh, I think it's time for me to wash my hands. It's been a little while and I've been scratching my forehead. Just doesn't happen. And do we have the supplies to do that? So importantly, that is the custodial staff being trained for that new disinfected, what is the wet to dry kill time? Again, disinfection is a separate step from cleaning, and are we assured that all our custodial staff is aware of how that works? So do we have supplies? I can tell you personally, I have been in both T.A. Duggar Junior High as well as Elizabethton High School at times during instructional times as well as for special events after hours, and there's been no soap in the bathrooms. That is not universal, obviously. That's not every time I've walked in the door, but I can tell you it's happened. And that may speak to male custodial staff not being able to enter female restrooms. What is our plan for that? What is our plan for having hygiene stay on supply and ensuring that they're resupplied throughout the day as necessary? So illness. Do our attendance policies still incentivize coming to school sick? Do we have classroom policies that incentivize coming to school sick? Oh, if you don't miss any days, you don't have to take final exams. Oh, if you don't miss any days, you get an extra point, you get to the brownie. I don't know. Those policies have existed throughout my children's school time. I think it's important that we ensure that all families get information regarding what should keep a child home from school and what they should be screening for daily. And those, of course, include a fever greater than 100.4, respiratory symptoms, or GI symptoms, because that actually is a common symptom for children with COVID-19. If a child is positive, what is our plan while that child is quarantined to ensure they have the instructional supplies that they need? Remember that because children tend to have much less severe disease than adults, and quarantine time is at a minimum 10 days, or 3 days after the end of symptoms, these children may be quarantined for a significant amount of time that they're actually feeling well enough to be involved in instruction. What we don't want is their parents who have been exposed to them coming to the school to pick stuff up. What's our plan for that? Do we have a plan in place? And is it clear for all families? Let's see, if a teacher is quarantined because of a classroom exposure, are they quarantined with pay? Can they use sick pay? Have we budgeted for that? What about substitute teachers? What training have we given to those people who are coming into our classroom about our new policies regarding masking, our new policies regarding cleanliness? Is all of that in place beforehand? Because it will happen. There will be a teacher who has to quarantine, and we need to have a clear plan for that. And it's, we know that Carter County right now is at 8.19 cases per 100,000 as of today's numbers. Patients from 50 to 60 account for about 7% of the cases and 12% of the deaths. Many of us in this room are in that cohort. That means that as adult teachers, they may be at high risk for dying of this virus or having a severe sequela, even if they do not die. Are we ensuring that we are protecting them and that they feel confident that they will be taken care of if, in fact, they are required to quarantine? Who supplies masks? What info is given to parents if we're asking parents to supply cloth masks? Do families know that those should be washed routinely? What is our plan for if a child arrives at school without a mask and still has to be part of our instruction? Do we have masks on hand? Do we have an appropriate volume of supplies? What about buses? Are our drivers protected? I don't know that any of our bus drivers are younger than 50. Again, that puts them in a high-risk group. Do they have plexiglass as recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics? Do they have hand hygiene as people arrive on the bus? Do they have the knowledge and authority to cohort seats? Do they have the authority to say, you need to sit with your brother? You're not going to sit with the high school kid, you sit with your brother. And do they have the knowledge to say, I need all the elementary kids down here, all the older kids in the back, whatever? Do they have that knowledge and authority to do that in real time as they're doing their pickups in the mornings? Let's see, morning. So in the morning, school is usually open, I think, about 30 minutes before instruction time begins. I know that unfortunately when I moved here, my children were taken to the gym and required to sit for those 30 minutes, which was in stark contrast to where we'd come from at Cherry Creek School System in Denver, Colorado, where they were not allowed in the building unless they were eating breakfast. When they did finish their breakfast, they were required to go outside unless it was less than 32 degrees or higher than 90, and we were a year-round school. So we did see both of those extremes. They then, when the bell rang, they had spots to line up, and then their teachers marched them in. They had a little rhythm, and they knew exactly what to do. Do we have staff to accommodate those kids being outside as opposed to inside? Have we planned for changing anything about that morning time and not housing kids all together in one room in the gym, or having some alternative? Realize that the AAP does recommend that unless a playground is in continuous use, it does not need any special disinfection. It only requires that you do hand hygiene before and after. So we need to ensure that, as possible, we allow children to go outside and use our playground equipment, and that teachers know what those requirements should be in and out of that playground time. Have we considered calendar changes, shifting forward or back, dropping fall break? I know lots of colleges have dropped their fall break and moved up their stop time so that they can have a more continuous time away and a more continuous time in school, disallowing for bringing virus from different geographic regions. The CDC recommends a specific point person for families as well as staff to go to for COVID-19 concerns, and I would hope that we would appoint someone specifically so that the community would have a resource and have that contact information. And I will end by saying that the AAP key principle starts with: school policies must be flexible and nimble in responding to new information, and administrators must be willing to refine approaches when specific policies aren't working. These are unprecedented times, and I know that we've all struggled with different things during these times. Schools can be reopened safely under the right circumstances. Germany has some evidence coming out that shows that that can be done, but I think Israel is a cautionary tale to show that not only can we sicken our staff and our children, but we can actually spread back to the community if we don't very carefully plan how this is done. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
That was
it.
very informative. Thank you.
So we have a few things on the agenda that are time sensitive, and we saved the reopening plan for last. So we'll try to get through these first things as quickly as we can. They're all important, but we wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for that. So first of all, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Anybody have any questions or comments? All right, item on the floor is to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, first item, approve the contracts between Elizabethton City Schools and Goins Rash Cane Incorporated, GRC, as construction manager for restroom and roof restorations at T.A. Duggar Junior High School. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
So as you can see there in your packet, we have those contracts included for you to look. It's very similar. As a matter of fact, they're exactly the same as the contract that you approved for the hardening of the entrances a few weeks ago. So if you have any questions specifically about that, so it's my understanding that they'll have some numbers for the restroom renovations. They should have those hopefully the next board meeting, so the 21st. So we'll have an agenda item on there, and then we'll attach those numbers on for your consideration.
Do you have any questions or comments? And I am remiss, I meant to say, welcome, Mr. Van Huss,
Thank
and
you.
congratulations, and nothing like jumping off into the deep end.
That's right.
You
don't know any better.
Well,
it's
you just
it is
cannonball
what
into
is.
it, pal, just
Absolutely.
cannonball into it. I
Thank
had
you.
that right at the top, and then I got distracted, so I did not want to get too far without saying we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
All right, hearing no questions or comments, item on the floor is to approve the contracts between Elizabethton City Schools and GRC for restroom and roof renovations at T.A. Duggar Junior High School. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item, approve the guaranteed maximum price amendment between Elizabethton City Schools and GRC for the completion of the hardening of entrances at Elizabethton High School, Harold McCormick, and Eastside Elementary School in the amount not to exceed $343,600. Can I get a motion to approve? Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
So this, again, is the amendment to the contract that you approved a few weeks ago. Again, you can see the number there. I will tell you that we pulled some items out of that relate to access control and the Avigilon contract that you also approved a while back out of the COPS grant. We pulled some of those items out so that they're uniform, so they're similar in nature to the other things we're doing at the other schools. So we've pulled some of that out, and we've left the other things that make sense, a lot of the door hardware and things like that. We actually met with Avigilon, Mr. Trent met with Avigilon to look at the possibility of pulling more of that out, but it just made sense to leave a vast majority of that in GRC's contract.
And the most important thing is we can afford it.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
All
Ms.
right.
Wilson and I worked together to make sure that we could cover that, and that's the good news.
Ms. Wilson doesn't look stressed, so that's always a good sign. So, anybody have any questions or comments? All right, item on the floor, approve the guaranteed maximum price amendment between Elizabethton City Schools and GRC for the completion of hardening of entrances at Elizabethton High School, Harold McCormick, and Eastside in the amount not to exceed $343,600. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item, approve a date to begin the Navy National Defense Cadet Corps program at Elizabethton High School. So can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
So Mr. Thompson's done a tremendous amount of work on this particular program, and I think you're aware that a decision has to be made by the 15th, which of course is tomorrow, if we want to move forward with this program. As we're all concerned, we're not sure what the future may hold. Mr. Thompson's been in contact with the Navy about how we can proceed in a cautious manner to ensure that we have the funding available to cover the position. He's done a lot of work to be collecting supplies for this, and we're very grateful to those that have helped with that. So the contingency plan, the suggestion would be that we agree to implement the program starting the 21-22 school year. And what we would do if we don't have the funds to hire someone, we have several teachers at Elizabethton High School that have military background, military history, and we would look to start the program even if it's just a period or two a day or even a program in the afternoons. So we have the flexibility to do that, and then look to hire the person when we feel like the budget can handle that. So.
Well, Mr. Thompson, thank you for working on this, and please relay our thanks to the Navy for being understanding. I know people are really excited about this, and just like when we were able to start with XQ, anything that offers kids an opportunity to engage, find something that's just their fit, I think is great, and our area is so military-minded. I just think this is going to speak to a lot of kids, and so I think that's exciting. So, do we need to make a motion that we would commit to the 21-22 school year, and with the understanding with the Navy that if we're not financially ready, then we can back that up, but that we're going to commit for the 21-22 school year?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll amend the motion to that.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
You may want to speak to this, or? All right. Item on the floor is to approve the 21-22 school year to begin the Navy National Defense Cadet Corps program at Elizabethton High School. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item, approve the 2021 organizational chart for the central office employees. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
You can see there, there's also that organizational chart supplied for you. Let me start by saying we have a tremendous staff, here at the central office as we do at the schools. So I appreciate how hard they've all worked. There are a lot of duties on here. You'll notice a lot of things that will require a lot of time, but I'm very confident in the people that that are in those positions moving forward. I don't know that the board has ever approved this or not, but in talking with Mrs. Owen, she noticed something in a board policy, so we felt like it was the right thing to do to bring that to the board for consideration.
I know for me, it's always helpful to have it because I always think I know where everything is, and many times I don't. So it's always nice to know where that chain of command is. Do I have any questions or comments?
I think it's good to have it out there. It shows the chain of command. Very good job.
Item on the floor, approve the 2021 organizational chart for central office employees. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Last item, approve the Elizabethton City Schools 2020-2021 reopening plan for COVID-19. Can I get a motion to approve? Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
All righty.
Okay. So, again, I want to start by thanking the committee that's worked many, many hours on this. This is not any one person. It's a group of people, and I would suggest that the board recognize that group, those individuals, at a future board meeting. We've met at least 5 or 6 times. They've worked not only here together, but spent time, on their own researching and pulling things together. And I can tell you again that we have tremendous staff that care about people, love on kids, and that's been the focus of every step along the way as we put this plan together.
Who serves on the committee?
So there's probably maybe 20 people.
Oh, wow.
I'm afraid if I start naming,
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
going to
Yep,
miss.
there's 20, let's.
Yeah, there are teachers, administrators, healthcare workers. Carter County Health Department's been involved as well, obviously all along the way.
Excellent.
Sure.
Yep.
They're, to start with, we all understand the stress that we're under as a community and as a school system on exactly how we move forward. And there are people across the spectrum on what they feel is important. You maybe have some individuals that feel like they're not comfortable with their students coming back in any public setting where there are that many people together. And they feel very strongly and passionately about that. And then on the other side, you have individuals that look at it from the standpoint of, my family unit is going to look very differently if I don't have somewhere to send my children so I can work and earn a living. My question is, who's right? Well, in my opinion, both are right. And again, every family has to make that decision. So there are no easy answers. There's no perfect plan. But what I will say is, this plan is flexible enough that it gives us leeway to adjust. It puts protocols in place, many of the ones that Ms. Modern spoke to earlier. And again, it's not perfect. It's going to be a living, breathing document. It will continue to evolve as we move forward. Everyone in here will agree we're in a lot different place today than we were even 5 or 6 days ago, especially 3 weeks ago, which that's where we are. We're 3 weeks away from the start of school. So what I would tell you that right now today, our intention, and we're moving forward with opening schools and providing in-person instruction for students. We're also going to offer a virtual opportunity for students, for those parents that just don't feel comfortable with their students coming back. I can tell you that virtual school will look much, much different than it did in the spring. This will be real instruction. It won't be review. It will be new learning. It will be staffed by our teachers. We're working now on a platform that will provide some a solid foundation of curriculum online that our teachers can use. They can modify, they can add to, subtract from, so it will be something that can be their own, but we're going to have the basic foundation in place for them, that they have something they know they can go to. So, and that's going to look, how we manage that will look different at every building just because of the differences staffing-wise and just the needs at each level. So let me start by saying this plan is not answering the question, what are we going to do on August 5th? Today, that's what our plan is. Again, that could change, and as we continue to move forward, we'll continue to work with the Carter County Health Department, the Regional Health Department, every step along the way. This won't be a decision that we make on our own. And there's no one metric that we'll use that says, well, this metric says this, so this is our decision. There will all be pieces of data that we'll use to make an informed decision, and I can assure you that every step along the way, the health department will be involved in that as well. So again, we're sensitive to the passion and the needs and the concerns of everyone involved. So that's just kind of an overview of how the committee worked forward and what our plan is. You know, obviously, there's going to come a point in time in the not-too-distant future that there's going to have to be a definitive answer of what we're doing on August 5th. In my opinion, today is not that day. There's still so much changing. You know, if you look at the epi curve for Carter County, it's not necessarily so much the daily number that you want to look at, and I have included that for you, a snapshot of today. But we're going to look at the trend over that period of time. And again, that was from guidance from the Regional Health Department. The example they used was, it's like if you're on a diet, you don't necessarily get on the scales every day. This is the same type thing. You maybe look at it once a week. They suggested you pick a day that you're going to look at this, and you're going to look at the trend. And obviously, today, the trend is not in the direction that we want. The trend is upward as opposed to downward, or at least stable at a low rate. So again, the epi curve, and we'll talk about as we get into the plan, that this will be one tool that we use moving forward to make decisions. So what I thought I would do is just run down, all of you have a hard copy of the plan there. Just hit a few high points there, and if there are questions along the way that you have, certainly ask those, and we'll try to get you answers. The details we're still continuing to work on. I know that we're in the process of procuring all of the materials that we need. I can tell you that TEMA has already provided 2 cloth masks for every student in the system. They're doing that. We already have those in hand. We'll be distributing those to schools Thursday. We also have thermometers. They provided 1 for every 40 students, so we'll distribute those based on numbers for each school. So those are supplies that we have on hand.
What kind of thermometers are they?
They're the
Infrared?
Yes, infrared, yes.
Non-contact.
Non-contact, correct. We also have some paper masks that we'll distribute as well for those that come in that don't have one.
Okay.
At this point, the plan is flexible in that masks are strongly encouraged. We're trying to work through what do we do with those students that come that don't have them, or if they walk up to the bus stop and they don't have a mask, are we going to turn them away? We'll have a supply, but eventually, hopefully what will happen over a period of time is they will continue to see the expectation that we have, and they'll get better and better about wearing those. So that's kind of an overview.
And do we have a number of supplies right now? Like, is there somebody charged with tracking the metrics of what's the burn rate of masks? Like, how many do you need every day? Do we have any idea what number we're going to?
No, I would say at this point it would be hard to tell. Again, we have the cloth masks that we're going to provide, and right now I think we have on hand, I think maybe 3,000 additional masks, the paper masks that we'll provide. The good thing is they're providing 2 masks per student, so we're going to have to do a good job of educating them to continue to wash those so they always have a fresh one.
Yeah, and I may save a lot of these comments for the end, but you said
Sure.
ask as we go. So just
Absolutely.
These are things I want to highlight.
Mhm.
One of the issues on masks is you have to stay ahead of PPE, and you're going to need PPE for the entire employment, our employees.
Yes.
Because they're actually the ones at risk. Start by saying, I really haven't seen this until it was emailed to me. I'd like to take some credit, but I didn't. That committee of 20 or 30 did the work. So I appreciate your comments, but they did a great job of at least taking a first stab and that sort of thing. But I know I do a lot of this. I see these numbers every day in my work. 30 children in the U.S. have died of COVID at school age. That's 196 or so as of this morning had passed away from the influenza. So we have to keep things in perspective. And I think that fear is running rampant right now because let's face it, we're in an election year, and this is a politically hot topic. I never thought I would see a surgical mask become a political statement, but it has become a political statement as to whether you wear it or don't. And we have people threatening violence when they come to my offices because we're asking them to wear a mask, and that's a medical facility. And so we have also security issues with wearing masks of people who come in and say, I'm not wearing it, you can't make me, and it's my right to choose and things of that nature. So, I mean, I'm shocked at some of the behaviors we have. At the same time, we have to make a decision point. But one of the hardest things, well, I also want to say on keeping things in perspective, we never worried about the influenza because it was, we felt like we had treatments and all, but we were really somewhat falsely secure because it comes through in the same ways. The thing is, there were about 400 suicides of children in schools last year, and suicides are on the rise because depression. Nobody disagrees, I don't think, that we need to be back in person, but 650 homicides in the last year, 4,000 accidental deaths, and those are on the rise as well because kids are at home. The safest place for your child is in school, and so I don't know if people are listening at home, but I wanted to make sure that those numbers were really evident to the public because there's a reason why we're taking the chances, so it seems. It depends on who you listen to about it politically, about bringing your children back in person. It is for their safety. It's also because they're behind educationally. And you made some really great points, Ms. Modern, about that. But having a supply of PPE, I'm more worried about, I'm not more worried about our staff. I think they're at greater risk of dying from this disease than the children are, or their parents, or their grandparents. And so I'm glad we're working with Dr. Kursky and health departments because I think they're thinking of the community. This board's role is for the children and what's best for the kids, what's best for that, but we have to interact and dovetail our plan with the public and with the community. So having a supply for the people that are at risk, as she mentioned, for the bus drivers and those, somebody has to calculate how many masks you need, and cloth masks are acceptable, but they're not as good as a surgical mask or a mask like these that you can purchase. And right now, you can get them. We just ordered 40,000 for my clinic. We have 100,000 on stock, and you can get these right now. I would get them while we can because if there is an uptick, we're going to end up needing them, and I'd rather be first in line. The governor, though, has made it available for school systems, is my understanding. So there are some ways we can tap into the resources where my clinic had to kind of compete. But as soon as we were able to get them, we went ahead and stockpiled. And we calculate a burn rate of how much PPE we're doing every day so that we do that. Those people screening temperatures, they need to know how to screen them and not expose themselves and that sort of thing. And so we need to make sure they have PPE on and have some kind of barrier method. So keep going.
I did want to mention we are
things.
purchasing masks for every teacher. They are cloth masks, but we are purchasing those, so we'll...
I wondered if our students in CTE could, do we still have sewing classes and things of that nature? Or
We
are those gone?
do not have that any longer.
We used to have those.
Yeah.
We don't have
Oh,
3D
man.
printers. We don't really
We can
sew anymore.
3D print.
Can we 3D print them?
Okay, I was just wondering if we could use our CTE to do some of those things. It'd be great
That was
class
back
projects.
when we were in school,
I know, and typing
10 years
too.
ago.
So I thought I would highlight a few things if you want to look through here. The beginning of the plan, there's some historical information, some background information as far as COVID-19 and other pandemics that have been in the past. On page 14, there's, again, another copy of the EpiCurve chart. We thought that was important to put out there and so people knew where we were getting that number. And also included in here, I believe, is the website where you can go. If you Google EpiCurves Tennessee, it will take you to the page where you can see this. And again, it's updated every day. On page 16, there's a chart there, and again, it talks about the 3 different levels based on the rate of spread. And again, this is the average rate of new COVID-19 cases per 100,000, and that's over a 14-day average. So there's a green, yellow, and red. And if the number is 5 or less, we're considered in the green. Between 6 and 10, we would be in the moderate, minimal to moderate spread. And then anything 11 or above would put us in substantial spread. And again, if you notice, at each one of those situations in the yellow, we're situation dependent. So again, this will be one metric that we use to make a decision, and we'll be, again, in contact with the Carter County Health Department if we have to make that decision. So right now, today, if you look at the metric, 8.19, we would be in communication with the health department. But what I would tell you, if that were the case, we would be operating in the yellow. And our plan is, regardless of where we are on August 5th, if we happen to be back down in the green, our plan is for 2 weeks to start, the first 2 weeks of school, we would start in the yellow, just to allow people to get used to that process if we have to get to that point. Obviously, if we reach red, we'll be fully online, schools will be closed. So there is certainly that possibility that things escalate to a point that we have to shut down for maybe 14 days, just to allow the spread to get back under control. So again, that will be part of that decision-making will be input from the health department and continued.
So are you saying if it goes to red, we're automatically closing? Did you?
We'll take this metric along with the health department recommendation, and then we'll make a decision if we're going to close or not. Yes. So it will be a combination of things. It won't just be that
It
number.
won't just be the number.
That's
Okay.
right. That's right. So at that point, if we were in red, notice it says consideration for school closure. So at that point in time, we would have those discussions if that's the appropriate thing to do.
Another thing I think we should do is include a parent and public education and/or a component to this that's on our website that's very visible as to what this number is, how it trends. Kind of update that all the time, maybe like a red, green, yellow light, so people know that they're engaged and they can follow along. And having a parental input on this committee or on the other helps with engagement, because we can have the best plan in the world, but if the public doesn't buy into that plan, it can be thwarted because they don't trust or have confidence in it. But if they take ownership of the plan in conjunction with people who have the actual authority to follow through, I think it could really help our system, because when people take ownership of they see it. They know the statistics, they see why we're making those choices, and instead of it becoming a political football, it becomes motivated for the right reasons. So I think part of this plan needs to be to educate.
Absolutely.
And that's marketing or advertising or whatever you want to call it, but it's some form or fashion of engaging the public so that they're not just getting a directive that we're going to close or open or whatever.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that our plan is, if the board approves this tonight, it will immediately be posted on the website, and we'll have a page dedicated. We've had a page dedicated to COVID-19 issues, and so we'll continue to update. That's a great idea. We could put the Epi curve, we could post that every day as it becomes available. We also, the whole time I was listening to Ms. Modern talk, I'm thinking it would be great for us to go ahead and put together an FAQ to start answering some of those questions as we go through. So we'll do both of those
Another
things.
suggestion I liked that she had was about having a point person for the public that could be very focused on those interaction with the public, but also the one point of contact. They may have to, work through you to get it to happen, but they could be the person that's the face of it.
Yes.
That could actually take that and then direct it. And if we need to temporarily appoint monies to a new position, even, I would consider that for having a person to help take the heat off so everybody can do their job. And at
That's
the
a good
same
idea.
time, they could filter through, and then I think they'll be more reactive to problems because they won't be distracted by what else they're doing. But
Rather than call the principal every day.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
that person can coordinate all the meetings for, well, the principal at this school got this question, and the other principals need to know. So, because this is how we handled it here, they could actually do that and then just keep you in the loop.
Yes.
I think it would really help to have that point of contact.
Okay, so let's see, moving on here. The next section, starting on page 17, talks about movement within the schools depending on which category we're in, green, yellow, or red. You can see some of those steps there. And again, this will all be posted online at the conclusion of the meeting. And again, it is fluid. Let me state one other thing also. We've talked as a staff. We're all going to be asked to do things that we've never been asked to do before. That's administrators, teachers, staff, everyone in the school system. And so I think it's important that we all be willing and open to those differences, because in my mind, this is a survival year as a school system, so that the school system doesn't look drastically different after this year. And that's from a student perspective as well as a financial perspective. So with that in mind, each one of the supervisors, including myself, we're going to be part of that as well. Each one of us will be assigned to a school, and we're going to be available if they need one of us to come down and help check temperatures, whatever that is. We're going to be part of that as well. So we're all going to be stretched, and my suggestion is we'll all have to take a deep breath and just. Teachers have always been flexible, but we're really going to ask them to be flexible for this year, certainly. So, move on to page 18 and 19. It talks about the different screening protocol that we'll have. On page 20 and 21, it talks about what we will do if we have a positive test for a faculty member or a student, the protocols that will follow there. And I will also remind you that Ms. Owen will be here tomorrow, our attorney. She'll be here talking to our administrators about COVID issues. So we're going to get a lot of information from her. So really looking forward to seeing her, and I hope that all of you can stop by if you have a chance. Of course, we'll be socially distanced and all those things in here, but she'll be a great help to us moving forward, as she always is.
Question
Sure.
real quick. Just, I know on the chart,
Mhm.
and then Dr. May's question about the red. Says
Yes.
Consideration for school closures, but then as you go through, the red says schools be, so it's almost, I didn't know if that needs to be, maybe the wording needs to be.
I understand. Maybe it looks like that it's an automatic
Yeah.
if we're there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just, I noticed that's
Yeah,
kind
we'll-
of through the.
We'll look at modifying that. You're exactly right. It does state that at every step, and there could be a situation where we're at, well, we'll make the clarification on that. So my view is that just because the number is 11, we may not be in the red. It depends on if we make the decision as a district with the health department that we need to close, then at that point, we're in the red. So that'll be one thing we'll have to distinguish on the EPI curves, those charts. Just because it's 8.9, we may be operating in the green, but it may be 6.2 that day, but we're still operating in the green, so it will be over time. But we'll make that distinction so it's clear. Page 22 talks about gatherings, talks about extracurricular activities, and how we'll move forward again in each of those categories. Specifically, it talks about athletics, beginning on page 24. And I will tell you, in the brief time that I've been in this role, I've been very impressed by the directors of schools across Northeast Tennessee. They're very helpful. There's not any, we have the answer and we're not going to share that. They've been very, very helpful. And I can tell you they're all on the same page on many of these issues as well as athletics. So there's a note there on page 25 that talks about the superintendents in combination with TSSAA and the local health departments. All of those groups will be in contact as we move forward and we make decisions about athletics. So
I have appreciated that so much, because you work better as a unit than everybody just trying to make it up as you go, because there's strength in shared knowledge and wisdom and thoughts and stuff. So I appreciate everybody doing that. That's just been great.
yes. On page 25, again, it begins talking about the different PPE and the cleaning protocols. I do not know the answer on what the cleaner is, but I will find out, and that'll be something that we'll put on the FAQ. So I'll find out exactly what we're using and what our training procedures have been, because I'm sure we implemented those back in the spring when all this began, because I know we immediately started cleaning, disinfecting, all those things in the school. So I'll get some more information
So
on that.
I know we have that cleaning machine. Are we still good on the amount of product we have to use?
We
and
are.
things?
We just
Good.
received several cases. We had ordered, we tried to order a couple of backpack units that we could utilize on the school buses. but unfortunately, those are back ordered, and I think they were canceled. But in speaking with Mr. Trent, I think there's some other options that we're looking at that aren't exactly the 360, the Clorox 360 machine, but something similar. So we're looking to get some equipment like that will help us more efficiently clean school buses.
And we did look at the Clorox 360. It did get coronavirus. At least I know that one did,
Yeah.
because when I looked at that one, we were looking at it previously. The buses was an issue. I think it'd be good, even if you get a regular sprayer and somebody goes in, but you got to look at how to protect them. They'll need an N95 respirator so they don't inhale it, but they could spray the buses in between. On the HVAC,
Yes.
is that here, or is that, it's now okay to ask about HVAC?
You can go ahead and ask, sure.
Okay, so on the HVAC systems, I know we worked through Train, but there has been some research done on bipolar ionization systems. I don't know what they cost, but I wondered if we could check on getting a grant to put these in our school systems. I know there's a university in Chattanooga that's doing those, but bipolar ionization basically kills 99.7% of all viruses, including coronavirus, in the HVAC every time it recirculates. And so what they're doing is they're raising the rate of recirculation and hitting it through there, so the air is transmitted but is purified every time they come through. It's actually better than a HEPA filter, which they use in healthcare. And so we're looking at those in our offices as well, cost-wise, how much they are. They're put on the front end of an air handler. I don't know exactly how that works, but it's after the air's gone through and is cooled, so that it has very little moisture in it. You may know more about that than I do, but you know, it has an ion generation that sparks and it kills those. That may be an option to get a grant for. We've gotten them for cameras, worth a shot.
Sure.
There's a lot of money. I think I read the Trump administration put $180 billion out there, but only like 90 million has been accounted for being spent. So I think there's grant money available that could maybe help us get something like that.
Okay. We'll definitely check in on that. Know that the Tennessee Organization of School Superintendents, they're providing some HVAC training as it relates to COVID, and that's actually Thursday. So
Okay,
I've
good.
shared that with
Yeah,
Mr.
that
Burrow.
is a great organization. They're working good.
Yep. Page 26, again, that's protocols for cleaning, and then if you flip over to page 28, it talks about transportation and busing, and there are a myriad of issues involving that, and as we've talked before, CDC guidance turns a 66-passenger bus into an 11-passenger bus, and the reality of being able to transport the students that have ridden the bus in the past at the rate of 11 per trip is not feasible in any stretch of the imagination. We couldn't purchase enough bus, nor could we hire enough bus drivers to make that work. So we're continuing to work on the protocols that will follow on those buses, and we'll make that readily available to parents, and then they can make the decision on whether or not they're comfortable with them riding the bus.
So have we talked about staging start times so that there's delayed starts so you could do different routes?
We have, so currently, every route we run but one, we have an elementary route, so a driver's taking care of, let's say, the students that attend West Side, and then they go back, it's the other way because high school and junior high start first, so they pick up all junior high and high school students, deliver them, and then they make that same run again and pick up the elementary students. So we already do that to an extent, but I will tell you that those routes are really full.
How long are the routes? Are they more than 15 minutes?
Yes. Most of them are more than 15 minutes. Ms. Trutchen?
30 to 35.
Yeah.
So we some routes start very early in the morning. No one's on a bus longer than the mandate.
Everyone had a mask. I mean, that could be, I think, 15 or 20 minutes, but, you'd have to shorten your route times to do that.
Yeah.
If you're, with the mask. Said if the routes were more 15 or 20 minutes, you could probably wear a mask. If you're getting 30, 35 minutes, you're with prolonged exposure, so, if somebody has it. And the problem is kids don't show it.
Right.
But they also don't transmit it. That's something people miss, is that, you transmit it by droplet spread, and unless they're spreading droplets, the it's not as quick, it's not as efficient. The row value for it is not nearly as efficient for a child transmitting virus as it is for an adult, because they typically are asymptomatic. Not to say they can't. They tend to transmit it by rubbing their eyes and then touching surfaces. But they don't transmit nearly as efficiently by respiratory, because they're usually not making droplets. So if they wear the mask, that helps some, but theirs is going to be hand washing a lot.
And we will have all those supplies as well, and
On
we'll
the
do
bus.
some training. Yes, yes, we'll have hand sanitizer and things like that that we'll provide on the buses and in the classrooms, so. So that's the plan. There in a nutshell.
Catching employees, I wanted to ask about that.
Sure.
I don't know if that's something that could be done. I know we can't, well, I guess we could mandate it, but I don't think we want to. I think, though, offering, in order to good faith for the community, if our staff would like to be tested, maybe offering free testing or arranging for it to be convenient, so that day one we know what our staff is like. I think that may be a good option. They do it for nursing homes. Certainly would send a message. I know our doctors are checked weekly. The ones that go into nursing homes and hospitals, they get rescreened every week. And that's surveillance testing. It's a little different. If you're tested because of symptoms, you're supposed to be quarantined for 14 days until you get the negative test, or 14 days, you know. And so that's the other thing that I don't see in here is what happens when one of our staff members is symptomatic and is tested or pulled out. You know, I think, like you said, we're going to be called upon to make decisions really hour to hour for a year here. And that's unfortunately your job. But you'll have to make those choices as to what am I going to do with these people when I get a teacher that had to leave and I don't have a critical player, because we already run kind of bare bones.
We do. You're exactly right, and that will be a challenge. We are requesting from the state a class size waiver for situations like that, just from the fact that we can still stay maybe under the 50 number, but it may be a situation where some classes may have to be slightly larger than normal because we may have a staff member that, for health reasons, isn't there, and they're handling distance learning. So there are some issues like that we're trying to, we hope the state will give us some flexibility. I know other districts have requested waivers similar as well.
Would you meet in like the cafeteria and things like that, or bigger
Sure.
spaces?
Sure, we could do, if we have to do that, yes, we'll find bigger areas. Yes, absolutely.
Outdoor areas?
Yes, and we're going to
Virtually no
encourage.
transmission outdoors.
Yeah.
You know, it's virtually, and you've got stadiums and some big areas, grassy areas.
Sure.
It'd be Socratic teaching in the old days.
Yes, we're definitely going to encourage, outdoor, students being outdoors and staff being outdoors as much as possible, especially at lunch times. I know that West Side for years has done the morning mile in the morning, so there's tons of students that are out on the playground already. So they're kind of already used to that, so we'll continue to encourage those things as we move forward.
So also back to staff, Ms. Modern alluded to it, but, the bus drivers and things. But I guess I wonder, have we done a staff personnel needs assessment, like risk assessment, I should say, so that we know how many at-risk employees based on their health conditions? I think probably have to be voluntary for them to fill that out. But if you had a questionnaire that basically looked for who's your at-risk employees and how do you keep them protected?
Right. We have done a staff survey, and we shared the results of that with the principals individually, and then they followed up. They're still in the process of following up with all those teachers that indicated a concern. So I can't remember. Dr. Newman, do you remember off the top of your head a percentage of staff that was concerned?
I think it was, not percentage-wise, about 30 staff that were concerned about that.
Okay.
So, but some of those, I think when principals reached back out to them, they were confused from the question. And so that number is probably a little lower than what it was to begin with.
Okay, and then, that may be also another thing to look at is on the children. Many of them are going home to young parents who have low risk. I think really under 50-year-olds can breathe pretty easily with this. But there are many that are also cared for by grandparents or in close contact. And as I said, our first duty is to our children, to the district, but secondarily, we have to think about how that impacts the community. And so if we think through, there may be those students who pose an increased risk simply not because they are at risk, but because if they brought it home, the repercussions of it would be more severe than if they brought it home to a younger person's home. We can't control what happens, obviously, outside of there. If we could, there'd be a lot of other things we controlled. But I think that is still one of the issues. If we know that there are elementary children or somebody that's not at risk of showing signs, but has a family member who's at risk, there may be a little different way to handle that child.
Right, absolutely. And we've also sent out a survey to parents as well, and we were somewhere around, Dr. Newman, around 300 that were interested in some type of virtual, and we're not sure how, again, the question, the wording of the question was very broad.
Sure.
So our plan is to send out another survey at the first of next week that's more definitive, where they'll actually put a student's name in, and then we'll start following up with them to line up those possibilities. So I think a lot of students that are in the situation that you are, their parents or grandparents may request that they do virtual school instead of in person.
And are we going to are we going to allow virtual hybrid models where some are virtual and some are in the classroom?
Yes, so the way we would do that, again, each school's a little bit different. So staff, again, it may look different at an elementary school, but like, for instance, at the middle school, and talking with Mr. Berry, he has a couple of teachers that he would pull periods of the day that they would help manage students that are in the virtual realm there. But those students will still be in contact with a classroom teacher to answer questions as they move forward, if they have questions about the content.
So I had an idea that maybe we could talk to the directors, the regional directors, and say, hey, we all have this need. We all have virtual students for whatever reason. We all have the same curriculum content. Why don't we have one teacher for the region share that role, and then maybe help each other? Because you could, have the Science Hill teacher maybe teaches everybody that needs that particular class, and maybe one over here teaches some, and then one over, and then you could actually make it more efficient, because it doesn't add any cost to the district if you add more people on your Zoom call.
Yes.
And if the regional directors could work together on that, I think that may be a little way to kind of improve our efficiency for teaching in that virtual, and plus expand our reach. Certainly, we could offer it to other districts and hope they offer it back, because I think they would. I think they'd say that's a good way to teach 30 kids at once instead of 5.
Absolutely. And that actually has been discussed
Good.
By the Northeast directors. So that's another, just the logistics of how to make that work. And everyone's in the same position in that until we get closer to the start and we actually know what the numbers are, not only the students but also the staff, that continues. And again, it's going to change day to day if we have when we have individuals that test positive, and so there's that component of it as well. But that has been discussed.
And I think it was the 1918 time that they had some of the school issues, but they had a school for kids who had it. Which is another interesting thing, was if this prevalence really goes a long way, is we may designate a building that once you have it, that's your school. So you can still be in person and still come. Most of them don't show, they're not that ill. And so that may be another opportunity.
I just have one comment. Sometimes we take for granted our support staff. Our support staff is there working when a lot of people are at home. And I think we need to make sure that we're fully staffed and have the support people that we need, and they have the supplies and cleaning supplies that they need, because that's a whole key for this thing to work, as far as schools to be sanitized and clean and prepared for when all the people do come back. So we need to really thank and support our support staff.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. It takes a village, and everyone's in a critical role moving forward, every single position, so you're exactly right.
I would like to ask a question, if that's all right.
Sure.
I have a few clarified questions, and then I'll get to my main
Sure.
one. So did you say that the teachers are expected to be putting their materials online as well as teaching in person, or did you have some other ideas for
No,
that?
we're actually going to purchase a platform, and the intent will be to purchase it for every student in the district. So teachers will have access to that as it's needed. So if we get in a situation where we have to close 2 weeks and we have to go completely virtual, they'll have this platform with all of the content already there, and then they can pick and choose if they want to use that content, if they want to use their own, or if they want to supplement. So it's flexible in that they can decide how they want to use that. But we feel like it's important that we give them that baseline for the virtual world, that so they're not constantly trying to take care of students that are in their room plus put information out to them. So that's why we're going to purchase a platform.
Okay, that's awesome. So if a student does think that they might have contracted the illness or something and has to stay home, I would wonder if that online instruction would be available for them, and then what that would look like for their attendance. Because while they may not be able to attend in person, they would still be getting their education online. So I was wondering if we had any ideas about the attendance for that, like Miss
Sure.
Modern brought up that we don't really want our students coming to school
Absolutely
sick at all.
not.
And so attendance has been something that we've kind of battled, especially at the high school for a while, and flip-flopping back and forth between incentives and how we're going to manage that. So I was wondering what that would look like.
Absolutely. So one of the items that the board will consider at the next meeting is a resolution to look at some of those policies, like attendance. It will look different, as you say, for someone that's in person and someone that's attending school virtually. So the resolution will say that we need the flexibility to have a plan for both situations, and we absolutely do not want students to come to school sick. Absolutely. So if that happens, if someone contracts COVID and they're home, this platform will be available for them, just like it would be someone that says, I want to do virtual school for a semester.
Okay.
So it will be available for them.
Awesome. So then my last one would be the teachers. My mother is a teacher at Ashley Academy in Johnson City, and I've heard her echo this concern so many times, is if they do go back and if for some reason they do contract the virus, will they have to be taking that out of their sick days, or will that be covered? Because I think that's important, especially if the teachers were expected to put stuff online, but she said there would be a platform for that. So I didn't know if you had any ideas about that.
Sure. Well, certainly if they're out and they're able to work, then that issue takes care of itself. But there are some protections under COVID now. I think if I'm not mistaken, there are 80 hours. I think that we continue to pay for employees if they're in that situation. We're going to get clarification on that, exactly how all that works with Miss Owen. That's one thing that she'll cover tomorrow and give us some real good guidance on how we move forward with that. But our intention would be to not force that issue, especially if someone contracts it and they have to be home. And again, it may be different if they're in the hospital or if they're still able to do some instruction, maybe virtually from home.
Okay.
So we'll get a better answer for that, and we'll talk about that next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do you know if virtual attendance will count towards our ADA?
That's my understanding. So the guidance from the State Department is you will have 180 days of school, and your instructional day will be 6 hours and a half. So again, that's going to look different from someone that's attending in-person classes as someone virtually. So the virtual attendance will be a combination of time that they're actually in whatever platform they're actually working, plus are they turning in their assignments in a timely fashion. So that's why we need flexibility on the attendance policy.
Yeah.
So those things will all play into that. So the expectation will not be for any student to sit in front of a computer screen for 6.5 hours. I can assure you of that. It won't be measured solely that way. But obviously, if a student, they're not logging into the platform at all, there's an issue. If they're not turning their assignments in, there's an issue. So exactly how does that equate to 1 day, 2 days of absences? That's not clear at this point. We'll have to work through that to determine exactly what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important point for funding.
Absolutely.
We need to make sure we capture that ADA because, our first goal, be healthy, but we can't lose revenue for the following year.
Absolutely.
And these kids are already falling behind. Is there any thought about how we catch them up, or are we going to assess where they are, the ones that were?
We will assess
Yeah.
to begin with, and then I think a lot of that depends on what kind of year we have. Are we able to, there's debate about how effective virtual instruction is as compared
Yes.
to in-person. Me personally, for my children, I want them there in person with that teacher if it's at all possible.
Right.
So I think as we work through those issues, hopefully that will become clearer. But again, we want options for people that they're comfortable with, and then we're going to work as hard as we can. The reality is, this may be a year that we essentially tread water, and we make it through this year, and we focus on real catching up, in the 21-22 year. What I can tell you, the guidance from the State Department is they don't want us to come in at the start of the year and start doing all this catch-up. They want us to move on with instruction and then roll those concepts that they may have been behind. They want you to scaffold that in with your new instruction. So it won't be we start at the beginning of the year with 3 weeks of things that we feel like that you should have learned in March, April, and May.
Yeah.
So
One of the things that TSBA sent out today was a list of policies that, we may have to make some changes on, be flexible with. Our policy book is going to have to be a little, like everything else, is going to have to be fluid. And but I appreciate that they are doing a great job of keeping us updated on what those policies are, and making sure that we're not doing something that we're violating our policy, but we need to make sure that it's working for us, not against us. And so they've done a great job of taking that burden off of us, because there'd be nothing worse than trying to do this and somebody trying to make sure our policies are up to date.
absolutely.
Ms. Owen will be here between 8:30 and
11:30 tomorrow.
I will not be able to be here during those hours, but I would ask her, are we able to rescind the policies in a state of emergency, much like a governor does, or a mayor, and rescind the policies only during the state of emergency?
I think the answer to that's yes, but we'll verify that with her tomorrow.
Because what I would think it might make, we put a lot of thought in those policies for a lot of reasons, and rather than try to redo every one of them, it
But
may
we're not
make.
redoing, we're just kind of, I think they put in the resolution that we're just,
During that period.
yeah, during
Yeah.
that
During that
period.
period.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to know,
Yes.
is can we have a way to not tear up everything we've done and thought
We're
through?
not going back and, we're not handling them.
Yeah,
Yes, we're not going to go back to the attendance policy and have, here's the policy
Okay.
for in-person and here's the policy for,
but I think-
we'll do that through procedure.
I think we're going to have to say, we will have to declare when the emergency starts and ends, because I wouldn't want to be tied to the governor or a mayor or somebody else's decision-making, because they would not be considering the school system, they'd be considering the whole. But
Yes.
we may want to say that during the state of emergency, we want to make it easy for you to be out of school when you're sick. In fact, we want to make it a code of
Encourage that.
conduct, code of conduct that you don't come when you're sick, And so to change that behavior rapidly is going to take something draconian. Otherwise, they're going to feel like they have to come. And what we learned in our offices in the last 2 weeks especially is that people lie because they are motivated. For instance, lady's pregnant and her husband wants to come watch the ultrasound, but he has symptoms. He comes right through the screener and finds out that he actually has COVID. And now we do contact tracing, and some employees are sent home for 14 days because they were in close contact for more than 15 minutes. Well, actually, just in close contact's enough for us. Face shields, number one thing, just as a point for those looking at PPE. In every case of the last 10 people, in every case, they would have been okay. The health department would have said when they contact traced someone they got exposed to, had they just had eye protection on. So,
Eye protection?
eye protection. Because they were already wearing the mask, but they didn't have wraparound eye protection. And so if you're going to be within 6 feet of somebody who has it and you were contact traced, as long as you were wearing proper PPE, then you would count, but it has to have the eye protection because it gets in the eyes too, and any mucous membrane. So the droplet spread can land on your eyes and give it to you. It's not just the inhalation, which that's obviously the worst. So just a thought for health department, because that's how they re-evaluated those, was this man lied so he could come watch his kid's ultrasound, and then this tech scans them, and then 2 days later finds out, and then everybody they come into contact with, that came in, that took their vital signs, that did their everything, and they tested negative, but they had to be quarantined until they were tested. So they missed 3 or 4 days, 3 days, I think. And it really runs your workforce ragged doing that. And then they don't like getting tested either.
One last thing I'll say, you've all mentioned the importance of communication, and we're going to work very hard to get information out through the various methods that we have, social media, our webpage, calls.
If you think having that point of contact person in the budget would be helpful, maybe talk about adding it to discuss at our meeting as a regularly scheduled one.
Okay.
And we can decide if we want to add an additional person or not. But
Okay.
if you don't think it is, I respect that. I'm just,
Okay. Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? First of all, Mr. Van Husk, thank you. This was really helpful, and to the committee, yes, we'd love to thank them. Couple of
Yes.
things before we go.
Do we need to vote on the plan?
Oh, that's helpful. Thank
I think
you,
we-
Phil. I'm so interested.
Made a motion to say we probably need to vote.
Forgot all about it. Item on the floor is approve the Elizabethton City Schools 2020-2021 reopening plan COVID-19. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. So, a couple of things. Our next regular scheduled board meeting will be again a week from today, 6:30. We need to do a new picture, so everybody come prepared for that. And Nicole, if you're here, good luck trying to herd the cats. And anything else? Okay, all right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you all. Good night.
thank you all for coming late.